The regret cuts deeper than anything I've ever felt before, but back then, my choices seemed so justified. The saying goes that the evil men do lives after them. But in my case, that evil follows me, day in, day out, haunting every moment of my existence. I can still recall that day, that fateful decision, with painful clarity. I remember how everything seemed so simple, so perfect in the beginning. It wasn't supposed to end like this. It was never supposed to get out of hand. I had been stuck in a rut for years. My job at the bank, my unfulfilled dreams, and my crushed hopes for a family with a man who left me feeling more like an afterthought than a partner. My life had been one failure after another. But then, I heard about the nanny job from my neighbor, Lucy. She was the one who had made the connection, not knowing she was leading me straight into my darkest plan. The family I was to work for, the Hendersons, were the epitome of perfection, at least from the outside. Michael Henderson had lived abroad for years, working a high-powered job while his wife, Julia, stayed at home with their 3 beautiful children. They were everything I wasn't, happy, carefree, and seemingly untouched by the harsh realities of life. When Julia's nanny announced she was leaving for a wedding, I saw an opening, an opportunity one couldn't let slip by. I was desperate to escape the cage I had built for myself and willing to do anything to feel powerful again. Lucy was hesitant at first when I told her I was quitting my well-paying bank job to become a nanny. She thought it was absurd, and I can't blame her. But I didn't care. I was determined, and nothing was going to stop me. I showed her the resignation letter the next morning. She stared at me in disbelief, her mouth agape. "You're serious, aren't you?" she whispered, almost as though she couldn't comprehend what I was doing. "Of course I am," I said with unwavering confidence, my voice steady despite the wild thoughts racing through my mind. Lucy tried to talk me out of it. "This is madness. Don't do this. You'll regret it." But the more she tried to convince me, the more resolute I became. The next day, I packed my things and prepared for my new life as a nanny, never once looking back. Julia wasn't thrilled with my appearance, especially after she had expected a younger, more energetic woman to fill the position. You're not exactly what I had in mind," she remarked, raising an eyebrow as she looked me up and down. I smiled inwardly. It didn't matter. I had a job to do. Lucy managed to convince Julia to take me on despite her initial reservations, and within days, I was living with the Henderson family, moving into their spacious home. The children, Ethan, Lily, and Emma, took to me almost immediately. They loved my stories, and I loved their innocent laughter. Julia, ever the gracious host, showered me with gifts, clothes, shoes, bags, grateful for my help and for the bond one was building with her children. What Julia didn't know was that I wasn't just there to care for her children. I had a much darker plan, and I needed her to trust me completely. She was too kind, too generous, and too oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. I had spent months researching, reading books, speaking to people, and even consulting with doctors during sick leave from work. I knew exactly how to carry out my plan without leaving a trace. I had studied poisons and their effects meticulously. I knew how to strike without ever being caught. One of the key elements of my plan was that I would never be seen in the kitchen while the food was being prepared. I had to stay out of sight. The poison I had obtained months ago, a rare, colorless, and tasteless substance, wouldn't be detected in the food unless it was administered in a very specific way. It had taken weeks of painstaking research to make sure I wouldn't slip up. I had to be careful. One mistake and everything would fall apart. Weeks went by as I waited for the right moment to strike. I continued to be the perfect nanny, winning Julia's trust every day. She even let me take the children on walks, and I would often sleep in their rooms to keep them company. No one suspected a thing. I was a part of the family now. Then, one day, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. It wasn't on a Saturday like I had originally planned. It wasn't a grand, orchestrated event. It was simply an ordinary Tuesday. And it would be the last day the Hendersons would live their normal lives. I had taken a few days off from work, citing health issues, but this wasn't about being sick. It was about having the time and opportunity to carry out my carefully laid plans. The children were downstairs eating breakfast when I went into the kitchen. Ruth, The cook was busy frying plantains, the sizzling sound filling the room as I slipped into position. I had prepared everything the night before. My research told me that the best way to introduce the poison was not to be caught in the act. I waited for Ruth to turn her back, her attention focused on the stove. Then, quick as a flash, I reached into my pocket, pulled out the small packet containing the poison, and added it to the bowl of custard she had prepared. The custard was the perfect color, pale yellow, just like the powder I had stolen from the lab months earlier. I was sure that Ruth would never notice. She was too focused on the food, too busy in her own world. It took only seconds, but I felt the rush of adrenaline coursing through me. The children ate eagerly, unaware of what they were consuming. They always ate quickly, eager for the day ahead. They didn't know what was in store for them. After they finished, I pretended to be busy with other things, cleaning up, smiling and chatting with Julia when she came into the kitchen. No one suspected a thing. As the morning went on, I couldn't shake the feeling of excitement and dread. It was finally happening. My years of planning, of waiting, of suffering, all of it was about to culminate in one final, irreversible action. An hour passed. I waited in my room, heart racing as I heard the first scream. Then another, and another. The sound of panic filled the house, and I knew the poison had worked. I quickly rushed upstairs, Ruth following behind me. What we found in the children's room was beyond anything I had imagined. Julia was kneeling by their beds, her face pale with shock. The children, once full of life, were now lifeless, their faces frozen in an expression of horror. I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, just satisfaction. As Julia screamed, I quietly left the room. There was no need to stay, everything had gone according to plan. I walked downstairs, and without a word, I picked up the phone. The ringing on the other end was unmistakable. Michael, Julia's husband. The man who had betrayed me, the man who had left me to suffer. I heard his voice break as he spoke. Why? He sobbed, his pain unmistakable. Why my children? I felt nothing. Not a single ounce of sympathy for him. He deserved this. All of it. I turned off the phone, tossing it aside as I walked out of the house, leaving the chaos behind me. It wasn't over yet. This was just the beginning. The rest of the day was a blur. Julia was frantic, calling the police, accusing Ruth and the security guard of foul play. But I knew better. I knew she would never suspect me, not when I had been so carefully positioned as the perfect nanny. I was the last person she would think to blame.